stars be with you.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Energetic Principles podcast. Here today is me, Melissa LaFera, on my first live stream that I have never done before. So I'm a little nervous. To be honest. So I'm hoping that this stream here today is helpful, because I know that some people are going to be watching me live. Some people are going to be watching the replay afterwards. Some people are going to be listening to this in podcast form, which is going to be interesting. So we'll see how that plays out. But I guess I will give myself a round of applause since I am today's guest. You know, thank you. Glad to be here. Glad to be here. All right. So, hi, Bonnie. Hi. Okay. So I'm trying to get a grip on this chat thing. I'm doing it through something that's called OBS. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about this before. It's the main streaming platform that people use on YouTube and Twitch. All the gamers out there, got that OBS going on. So I'm trying to do it all within this. So hopefully I'll be able to see the chat okay. So, all right, Big Steph. Big Steph's always coming in and giving me some feedback on the broadcast, and I'm always appreciative of that. Oh, Kiki's here too. Love Kiki. Kiki. One of my besties for the longest. She's my spiritual gal pal. It's funny how we meet people in life that take us to the next stage. You know, when you meet that special person, and it could be a mentor, it could be a friend that is just aligned with you to go to, you know, the next journey of your life, which is essentially what we're going to be talking about here today, right? Because this is a Sagittarius live stream, because Sagittarius season is coming up here, November 22nd, 2023. And this is going to be a big change from obviously the Scorpio energy that we just experienced, and the Libra season, right? We've been through it. I mean, how many of you feel like you've been through it? I have totally been through it. But that's the beauty of Sagittarius season, is that, you know, this is Jupiter season. And it's funny, my partner made a little background music for me here, which maybe I'll put on here in a second. But I had a song that just kind of came up when I was thinking about Sagittarius season. And it was all, Sagittarius season is the one and only reason we move on in life, searching for experience. And so that's essentially what Sagittarius is it is all about what is next. What are we going to experience? So now I'm just going to put on Jay's background music. Let me know what you think. Oh yeah. So we're just going to take it down a notch. He made this music for me the other day because I was like, you know, I don't have time to put it together. Can you slap something together for me? And so he made this, and I started speaking over it, and I have that lower, you know, Scorpio rising voice. And he was listening to it, and he's like, it kind of sounds like a sex hotline. So it is still Scorpio season right now. So if you're getting that vibe, there we go. So let's talk about what is going to happen during Sagittarius season. Just the overview, because that's usually how we start the podcast here. This is mutable fire. This is the mutable fire season. This is Jupiter season. We've got Jupiter hanging out in Taurus, still retrograde. So that's going to flavor, you know, the whole vibe of Sag season here. And we also have, guess who's going retrograde? We have Mercury. Mercury's going retrograde during Sagittarius season, so that is a big factor that we'll be talking about here today. Also, Neptune is stationing direct, and Neptune definitely has a story to play in this Sag season, so we'll talk about that. We also have we're under a Scorpio new moon cycle, right? Big Steph just said it's been heavy, to say the least, right? That's, it has been heavy. Scorpio new moon cycle we're under. This is opposite Uranus. This was the sun, moon, and Mars all conjunct right before the synodic cycle turned over with the sun and Mars. And that's big news. That's huge news. Everybody's having a moment with their soul. What am I doing? Where am I going? How do I feel about this? What doesn't work? What is composting? What do I feel inspired to do next? What if I don't feel that inspiration? I'm still figuring it out, but I know that this isn't it. These are all things that can be going on right now. But that's the beauty of Sagittarius season, right? We are going into the land of experience. What am I doing next? What can I, get my hands in to kind of get a feel around? Because that's the beauty of this sign, is that it plays. It's a transitionary sign. It's a fire sign, so it wants to be in the moment, wants to be in the now. And so we're going to be in the now, we're going to be playing, and we're going to be experiencing. We're going to see what turns out without attachment, because that is a part of it, right? We just have to experience life and see where it takes us. Just like me here today, I am wearing a pair of pants that I bought that I have not taken the tags off of because they were a little tight. So I want to sit in them. I want to experience them right now. And, try before you buy. I feel like that's Sag energy there. So, all right, well, what else is going on? We're going to have a full moon in Gemini, which we're going to talk about straight out the gate here. We also are going to have mutable quarters before we get to a new moon in Sag. And, mutable quarters, this is all about transition. Life is, it's like the train track, where it's one's going this way, one's going that way, and we just kind of choop, 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 choop. And life moves, life transitions. And so that is the energy that we're in right now too. We also got Venus moving through Libra and then moving through Scorpio during Sag season. And we have Mars going to leave its nighttime domicile of Scorpio and move into Sag. So it's a lot. Sparkles, he's here for the hotline. Yeah, I'm like, what would you like to talk about today? What's on your mind? Oh my goodness. So, that kind of overlooks everything. So we really can start getting into it. Oh, Big Steph likes the groove. Yeah, I'll tell him that. He got right on it. He's like, it was late at night. Maybe that's why it's like that sex hotline. It was like midnight putting together the groove for the live stream. Oh my gosh. So that's the beauty of this live stream. I gotta hand it to old Sparkles of Gold over there, my good friend Nicholas Polymenakos. It's he's been live streaming like a pro. This man's becoming a guru of the live stream. I watch and I'm like, are you talking to me? You talking to me? You are talking to me, aren't you? No, he's talking to everybody else, but he's talking to me too. And so it's exciting to add music and little kitschy things, which I'll have a little bit of us throughout the stream. So, but the main goal is I need to make this to where it's good for the listeners who are watching, but also good for the listeners who are watching or listening to the podcast, because most of my audience is actually audio, right? It's easy to listen to podcasts when you're working or you're gardening like I do. So hopefully this will translate for everyone. But we are going to move on. We'll have to say bye to the music. Bye, hotline music. You've been good to us. So let's cruise on over to our chart action and see what's going on in the skies, because this is the fun part, right? We are going to do our play by play. And so I have put together, I thought, since we're having fun on the stream here, I put together a few indicators of maybe if I remember to do this, right? This is a lot of things going on. I got a few indicators of different transits. What about the vibes? How do we get the vibes from these transits? Here we see our Sag ingress here, November 22nd, 2023 at 6:02 a.m. here in San Diego, California. Big Steph, yeah. The tags aren't itchy. I'm okay. That's actually, they got the tags in the right place and they're stretching out. I think these might be my pants. think they just might be my pants. So I put together a couple little indicators of potential transit vibes. So first we got Vibe Cat. We got Vibe Cat here. You might be familiar with Vibe Cat. When the mood is right and you're feeling it. This is the cat. This is the cat right here. You know, sometimes like life is a little bit confusing, or you're like, what is happening? What is going on? That's where we got Blinky Dog. Blinky Dog is like, what are the planets doing? What are they giving me? How do I move through this? We got the, you know, even when life's confusing or things happen, we got, you know, the sun always comes out. We got the sun, soaking up the sun. We got the sun rays. Thanks, Bonnie. Nice effects. Hey, Alan. All right. Puppies and kitties. Who doesn't love puppies and kitties? I'm all about this one. I'm calling this the worm slap. This could be a snake. I'm kind of liking the worm. But, you know, the kids these days, they say it slaps. That slaps. So if we think that a transit's going to slap, we got worm slap going on here. And of course, you can't really get away from the thunder. You know, that's when things are a little challenging here. And the old thundercloud might come out. So that's who we're working with here today. But most of all, your opinion matters. I want to know what you think. So the people here that are joining me in this first live stream in the chat, thank you for being here with me. That's great. I'm very honored that you want to spend your Sunday afternoon with me for a short period of time. But I also want to know what you think about the transits as I'm talking about them, to prompt, because you are my guests today. And I love guests. I love talking to people. So, Jay coming in. They love your song, Jay. Everybody was about the hotline. So, all right, well, let's get into the actual delineation of these transits. So, Sag season. I mean, one of the things right away, if you notice, if you look, the sun, the second it moves into Sagittarius, now that Saturn has gone direct in Pisces at 0 degrees mutable signs, we have immediate squares happening to any planet that goes into Sag. So we have the sun first thing, you know, that's an interesting, let's think about that. Let's think about that for a second. It's an interesting. Don't you love that word? It's interesting. Well, what does that mean? Well, it is interesting because on the start of Sag season, we basically have a moon just coming off of Neptune, but also trining Mars, which is a lovely entry in many regards because of the sun synodic cycle that just happened in a trine to Neptune. We just had that here on Friday, the 17th. I don't know how you all were feeling about that. I'd be curious. Put in the chat what you felt was changing over for you there. But there was this is that first sort of hit of Neptune that's coming in. That's going to be a theme of Sag season, is these Neptunian vibes. And we think about Neptune, we think about the dream, the vision, we think about confusion, we think about disillusion, we think about glamour and spectacle, we think about just water in general and the seas, and what erodes, and what might be an illusion or a fantasy, but what can be imagineered into life because we are connected to what we envision. Our whole reality is based on what we envision in many respects. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later here when we start to think about the full moon coming up. But that being said, back to the start of Sag season. And so we have this disorienting but also motivated moment, you know, where we're attached to the dream. The dream is here, but how do we realize the dream? And that is where the Sun Saturn effect comes in, because a square to Saturn, this is when any square is essentially when a road, the path breaks off. Are you going to go that way? You're going to go that way. What way are you going to go? Luckily, the sun is giving us that awareness, right? And I kind of, So it's fascinating to think about Mars's position in relation to the sun now, right? Because it's rising before the sun, so now it's considered a morning star planet, or in ancient astrology they'd call that an oriental planet. And so it actually makes it more of we have an interesting Mars because it is going to still be under the beams of the sun until January, like mid-January. So and it's not out of combustion, I don't think, until maybe around Christmas time, somewhere around there. But it's still riding close to the sun. But the sun and that being said, it rises before. So what that means is where we were in this the motivational energy and the mission was dying down and it was composting and, we're feeling this kind of balsamic phase with our energy. Now that it's changed over and it's a morning star, Mars is popping. If any, this is where it starts to collect energy. It's more outgoing. It is more extroverted in a sense, and it's more hot and dry. And so there's sort of like this popping off energy that can come up with Mars now in a morning star phase, and especially once it moves into Sagittarius, because that's what we have to think about in these first few days of Sagittarius season. We have Mars moving into Sagittarius on Friday, the 24th, and it gets that immediate square with Saturn as well. So first, the sun's going to make us aware of what the obstacle is, or what the long-term reality is, or where we have to do the hard thing, or have to buck up and deal with certain things that might feel limiting or difficult, but also where we tap into our sense of fortitude to make a transition, right? Saturn is the bones of our body. This is what holds us up. If we didn't have Saturn, we'd all be like these jellyfish. We'd be these goopy slime balls running around. So Saturn definitely has its purpose, but it's not always fun when we're going through it, right? And especially when because Mars and Saturn have a very intimate relationship when it comes to what we get done in life, right? And thunder. Yes, thank you, Bonnie. Or no, Lisa said thunder. All right, hold on. Yes. See, there's a lot going on. This can be a little bit of a thundercloud at first. There's a little thundercloud. I love how the thundercloud's actually obscuring the sun and Mars on this the chart. So, yes, thunder moment. But, I think when we're out on the other side of it, this is where we're soaking up the sun straw, because we have to go through the tension and the obstacle and the difficulty to know what we're doing, to have that sense of awareness, right? Because the Sagittarius energy is all about understanding, right? That the experience to understand. We have to encounter it so that we can synthesize it and come to some sort of understanding or belief, or it's just to know what we're working with, but we don't know what we're working with until we encounter it. So if you have a little thunderstorms, you have a moment with yourself, Saturn's coming up. Saturn does feel very thundercloud, right? And Pisces too. We just got to get through that. But what in a grander scale, this can, if we want to really pull it back, since we've been talking about Mars sun cycles, is that this is a closing square to Saturn, right? So we got to think about when Mars's mission with Saturn, when that was started. And that was in April of 2022. I don't know if anybody remembers back then when we it was a party between Venus, Mars, and Saturn all in Aquarius. That was the start of this cycle with Mars, the cycle that is this, where we place our motivation in with a long-term plan, in a structure, and what we're putting effort for. Yes, so come on back. Think about what might have been going on for you during that time. and how the turning point of now, how that relates to where you're feeling that pressure to move on and do the next thing. So let me get back to, yeah, there we go. There we go. Oh yeah. So, So you know what else is happening here? Look at old Mercury hanging out. 21 degrees Sag. I think it's going to be 22 if I do believe. So Saturday, once we go through that moment with the sun and Mars and Saturn, I don't know why I just thought of the come to Jesus moment. Maybe with ourselves. But Mercury is entering its shadow right here. And this is important to think about because what is happening in this sphere of time for the weekend of November 25th is we got Mercury in its shadow. I feel like I just got to throw some confused dog. I feel like this is going to be a theme. Confused dog is going to be a theme for this weekend but not in a bad way. I don't want to say like because confusion has its purpose. Like uncertainty gives us doubt, but it also gives us promise, because if we don't know, then we don't know. And that can be actually a beautiful thing. So I'm just going to enter Blinky Dog. Blinky Dog will come back. Andrea, I don't know during what time. I'm not sure what time of what you're referencing there, but yeah, drop it in the chat and I'll let you know. But so Mercury in its shadow phase. So this is our like precursor, right? We're going to dance back over these degrees. That's the whole purpose of a shadow phase with, well, any planet retrograde, but especially we hear it the most with Mercury, because we are going to revisit these degrees again. And Mercury is all about perception, right? So what are we perceiving at this moment? What do we need to understand? What are we going to go back over? You know, Mercury is in Sagittarius, which Mercury doesn't get the best rap in Sagittarius because this is its sign of detriment. And detriment is, you know, debilitated planets are not a bad thing. If you, I taught a whole course on rulership and dignity. I believe Bonnie was in that course hanging out with me. And it's not a bad thing, but it just doesn't operate the same way, right? Think about Mercury. Mercury is all about selecting. You know, it can look at something and it can piece out and it can be like that. Yes. Sag is like, oh, it's a whole enchilada. it's everything. It's the bigger picture. Which is great, but sometimes we can miss the details there too. So there is this sense of big picture view overall, just 100% big picture view is coming up here. And we're going to sit with that, but we have to realize back to this uncertainty that there is things that we don't know, and we got to be able to sit with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on towards the next big event, which is going to be this full moon in Gemini on Monday, November 27th. It's going to happen at 1:16 a.m. Pacific. So right when we're sleeping there, which is always fun when we have, I don't know if you ever notice when we have Mercury transits or Mars transits, especially from the moon, it's hard to sleep sometimes. It's like difficult to sleep. So we got this full moon, and this full moon is fascinating to me. Let's get Confused Dog back up here, because you know, obviously a Gemini full moon, we want to know what Mercury's doing. We just figured out that it's going to be in shadow phase, but who is it in exact square to? Exact, I mean same day, Neptune. And so that makes for very interesting, back to my generalized word here, very interesting transits. So let's think about that. Let's go back to chains of command and the theories of the course that I taught, right? Because we do have this Mercury-Neptune vibe going on, and I have some theories about that, which I'm going to share here in a second. And we got to follow the chain, right? Because where is this chain leading as far as rulership's concerned? We do have this Sag sun being ruled by this Jupiter in Taurus, who's retrograde. And I really didn't do a treatment on Jupiter and Taurus and just thinking about that. So I might want to pull out a little bit for a hot second. We're deviating. This is what mutable signs do. We're deviating. So Jupiter and Taurus, retrograde. I mean, there's a different quality to this Sag season overall. If we think about still Jupiter being retrograde in the internalized energy that's happening over growth and expansion and just the wisdom centers of ourself and what we're learning and the knowledge that we're gaining. And Taurus does move at a slower pace, right? So there is this sense of moving forward in life is not jet propelling to the next thing. This takes patience. This takes purpose. This takes integration. So there's this point of integration and embodiment. We think about Taurus and Earth being this sense of embodiment, that we're moving at this slow pace. We're still internalizing what that growth story looks like, what that quest looks like, what we want to experience next. How do we get there? How do we start to take these visions that are probably going to come up during the Gemini full moon there and all this Neptune activity, and how do we make them reality? How do we push forward in the physical space? Now, Jupiter is not going to go direct until December 30th at the end of this year. So keep that in mind as far as preparation for movement forward. But now let's go back to our chain of command, right? Because Jupiter is looking to Venus, and we have Venus over here in Libra. In look at her, she's about she's headed to some, pardon my French, some shit. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but she is getting really close to this South Node, and will go on to make the same planetary connections that Mars and the Sun and Mercury did earlier, where there's this connection to the South Node, there's these squares to Pluto, and then the movement into Scorpio. So thinking about this relational dynamic and our sense of balance and wholeness and the beauty that we want to create in the world, or making peace with the world when it's not beautiful and it's not perfect and it's not ideal, because Lord knows we are not living in that world. So how do we bridge the gap of understanding, of knowing that we don't live in that world when we're in this place of ideals right now, and we look around us and it is frustrating, it's difficult, it's not fair. I mean, that's a big Libra thing. It's not fair. I mean, we obviously know what's going on over in the Middle East, and how unfair that situation is to many groups of people for various reasons. But how do we make peace with that? How do we reconcile that? So there's this part of us that is going to be unsettled with the South Node and Venus there. But how do we get us back to balance, right? We can't be drained down into the South Node. We want to stay with our vision. We want to stay with our the ideal, because the ideal is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's what makes the world a better place. That's what gets us to where we want to be in life, is we have to follow some sense of ideals, right? So, okay, back to my theory. And so basically, to sum that all up, all the planets, because Venus is the only one in its own sign, for the most part, this, what do we got here? The moon looks to Mercury, who looks to Jupiter, who looks to Venus. So it's all kind of coming back to Venus here. Now, I had this theory, and I wrote about this in my newsletter, and some of you might have read it if you are subscribed to the Heavenly Wind. And if you're not, come on over to energeticprinciples.com and sign up. So I had this theory about observer effect and how this full moon is going to play into that idea of the quantum physics of us as observers to reality and the uncertainty of reality, and then how we observe it and take it in is essentially what moves the particles of form to create what it is that we observe. Kind of like that old saying, if a tree falls in the forest, did anybody hear it? Did it really even happen? Well, who knows? So as we get to this place of, a mercurial full moon with Mercury squaring Neptune, what is reality? What is that we are observing? Can we change what we observe? Think about the idea of like timeline jumping, which has become popular in maybe just in my feed. I don't know about your feed. So how can we switch the way we observe and to create a different reality based on what that perception looks like? And it sounds very cliche, but it's very potent when you think about it. And I had drawn a card, and I brought some cards. I'm going to draw them on the fly here, but I drew this beforehand, and so I'm not going to draw this one again because I think it's very potent, is that I drew the star card for this full moon in Gemini. And it feels, this is the inspiration, this is the hope, this is the vision, this thing that you see off in the distance that's not here today, but you have to have the idealism and the wishful thinking to be able to make it a reality by having your mind set on it. And so I thought that was a very potent card to come up here. I am using the Asherah Tarot here today. I know I should be using the Tarot of Her, but my dummy deck is getting a little worn. So we are just going to put that on the back burner until I get our legit decks that we are making. So Lisa says, Lisa, how will Jupiter and Uranus be affected by the ruler Venus on the South Node? So that's just interesting to think about with the Jupiter aspect of, Uranus is not quite in this full moon as much as obviously Jupiter is, but we are bridging the gap from Jupiter to Uranus. And I think that's a very important thing just to state with the quality of this period of time right now, is that everything that was switching during the Libra season eclipses and the change of direction and mission that we're feeling in Scorpio, it facilitates a much bigger shift that's happening in April when we do have Jupiter and Uranus come together in a conjunction around the same time, or not too long after, when we have another solar eclipse in Aries. So anything that's really Jupiter involved or Uranus involved or bridging the gap between the two, it's pointing to the space and time that is coming during the spring. So keep that in mind. But really, if we want to come back to the very simple and basics of it, with thinking about Taurus being this place of manifestation and how we are receiving the natural world and what it is we are attracted to in a very sensual state, right? Taurus is it's about the five senses. It's about what we feel is right, what feels right to grow into. And if there's these dynamics that are off kilter, Venus is about balance. It's about value. It's about, the attraction level of what we feel called to. If that is not lining up or out of alignment, or feel like it's being drained in some way through other people, through commitments, through people pleasing, that's been something that's come up a lot. We can't get to that manifestation form. We can't get to the mission that is going to proceed with Jupiter going direct at the beginning of the year, until we wade through what is not lining up. What values? I think values are a very big piece here. So if we have this dream and we want to push forward and we're still integrating on that, then how is this relational component? How is this value component? How is this socialized component and this justice component factoring into that being able to happen? So I hope that answers your question, Lisa. Let us move on. There's so many things to talk about here. And so I think this is going to be a very interesting full moon. Just be careful on the roads. Be careful with more like mechanical type of things, right? Because all of a sudden you'd be just blinking at it and it can shapeshift. It has a shape-shifting quality where you're like, I didn't see that coming. Not in an Uranian way, but just like it's like almost like a psychedelic way, it feels like. So, all right. So basically what happens next is Venus is going to go on to do what we were just talking about here. So we kind of already covered this Venus conjuncting the South Node and then squaring Pluto, and then she's going to move into Scorpio. So we start the week of the 27th with this full moon, right? What a way to start Monday. And the Venus component is going to be in the air the entire week, right? As it gets to the South Node placement, which is going to be on Wednesday, the 29th. And then she'll go on to square Pluto later that weekend. So we're going to feel Venus-Pluto action the weekend of December 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And then she will eventually move into Scorpio there the following week on December 4th, December 5th, somewhere in there. But let's back that up. Let's back that up to Venus on that South Node and getting ready to square Pluto. So let's see. I'm trying to think of I need a different emoji for this one. Anybody have any thoughts here? I feel like, I don't know, confused dog doesn't really work. It's almost like, I didn't share this one, but it's almost a little crying cloud. It's almost a little crying cloud there. Only because certain aspects, and some people are more sensitive to this than others. Some people are fine when interpersonal dynamics are a little rough and they just go about their business. And maybe they're more Martian oriented and they're like, I can't deal with you anyways. I was doing this. But some people, like my Libra moon partner, has a difficult time when there is difficulty with relating or feeling off balance or just these relational components. And we're always relating to something. If we think about that I did a podcast with, Michael J. Morris. When we talked about relating, all the planets are relating. We're constantly relating to life and the planets. This is essentially what Venus conjunct the South Node is. It's like whatever you relate to, this is going through changes. So it's going to be a little crunchy when it comes to relational aspects, especially as we get to right there on Friday, December the 1st, we have that Cancer moon. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little thundercloud, on Friday, December 1st there. So this could be a little bit of an emotional scenario coming up with Venus squaring the Pluto and then the moon performing a T-square with that. So just know you might be more sensitive to interpersonal dynamics, to the injustices of the world, right? Pluto at the end of Capricorn, we are feeling it all over the place. Like it is, we always hear the term, the late stage capitalism. We are feeling that. And there's going to be things that could happen. Maybe there are some sort of like casualties that happen to younger folks, or things that hit home. I'm saying that in a very loose sense, but you think about the Cancer moon, like there's this sense of something can hit home in a way that could be very disturbing, as Pluto can be, but how do we come back into our balance? How do we level out? How do we still be able to come to agreement, or working with, if it's on a personal level, being able to be the bigger person to find the compromise that Venus and Libra can bring. So do know that this is going to be a defining moment, especially since she's about to move out of Libra into Scorpio. So she's going to lose a little bit of dignity, right? Venus is losing some dignity, but it's not always about relating to the other person and being the people pleaser and being, acquiescing to things and playing nice and making sure everything is, kosher. There is this dynamic where she is going to get worked by Pluto, and then she's going to go into Scorpio. And that is a different Venus altogether, right? I feel like she's kind of like, she's not in her best place there, but it has a worm slap feeling to it, because she's going to have gone through some things. She's just like, oh, wait, you want to play that game? Okay, here we go. This is what's going on now. And I'm going to call it. So I kind of like Venus moving into Scorpio, to be honest. There's a realness, there's a rawness, but there's also, just because of Mars's relationship with the sun right now and still in combustion, that rawness that I speak of, like there is a chance, especially in interpersonal dynamics, for things to get pretty riled up, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if there's stuff that needs to change in relational dynamics, and rather than going along with status quo or making sure nobody's rocking the boat, this is gonna shake that up and get that moving. So I think that is a positive thing that comes out of it. And what's nice about this is that during this whole time we have Mercury, because Mercury is doing things too, right? Mercury moves into Capricorn on December 1st, and it's going to make that connection with Saturn as well. So Mercury is going to sextile Saturn while we're going through all this Venus stuff, right? So if anything, our head is in a more practical, straightforward, what's the realism? Let's look at this realistically. Let's be down to earth. So it's not like we can't work with what's going on, because we're in a realistic state of mind. And so rather than just kind of succumbing to the difficulty of what Venus might be feeling, and Mars being in this sort of testy space where is blindsided by the sun, at least our heads are in a spot that are more down to earth, and willing to work through difficulties or the obstacle, or willing to look at things in a realistic sense that helps the energy move on, or helps us to release and let go of scenarios that are out of balance, or values that don't align with the vision, right? We're still really attuned to the vision because it's Sagittarius season, number one. So keep that in mind. So, all right. Well, hopefully y'all are following along with me here. It's so interesting just to talk to myself. And all right. So the next thing that happens is we have this last quarter moon in Virgo. Around the time, let's get our last quarter moon in Virgo here. Sort of around December 4th. December 5th. So here we have last quarter in Virgo. To me is always like, yeah, life is moving forward, but what's all the bits and pieces of the physical world and our reality and all these projects and all these to-dos that are that are could be over, past due in a sense, but we're picking up the pieces of life, I guess is what I can say here. And so that is the start basically of December 4th, is the week of December 4th on that Monday, is we're getting this Virgo energy and we are ready to TCB, I guess we could say. I'm going to give this a vibe cat, actually. I'm going to go vibe cat with this because some good Virgo energy, even if it were pushed to do it. Mercury is sextiling Saturn right now. We know what we need to do. We got Venus. Venus is also trining Saturn. And so she's cooled her jets. She's passionate. She's purposeful. She's connected with the mission and the soul, but she's also aligned with, okay, yeah, well, what do we got to do to make this work? How can we communicate in a way that is in service to the direction that we're going in the long-term mission, rather than just kind of being in the moment and not thinking ahead. There is this sort of mitigating factor of potentially hot and fiery energy that brings it all down to earth, so we can take the inspiration, we can take the passion, we can take the motivation to transition and move on, but do all the things that are needed of us in a physical space to do that. So I'm giving that a vibe cat, actually. That's what's going on there. So Big Steph, you like Venus in Scorpio too. Yeah. That long trek through Virgo. Tell me about it. The energy just felt constipated to me. It did feel a little constipated. I feel like I might have been a little constipated, TMI, but it's true. Yeah, her journey through Virgo did definitely feel that. And we got all the eclipses. All the eclipses happened through that energy. So she's out of Virgo, but we still have that energetic timestamp of what she was doing there. And maybe that's actually a great point, Steph, is that every time we're going to have the moon kind of come through Virgo and then Libra as well, it picks up these ghost spots of the zodiac, right? When we have things like synodic cycles start over, or we have eclipses and like primary spaces that energy is stamped in time, the moon delivers that energy back to us in a somatic way. So that's something just to think about, especially during this time as we get to this last quarter, this final push. But also it puts us, we're going to go into the balsamic phase here soon enough. And so we're going to have time to process all this. But I like that. So I am the cosmos agrees Scorpio and Capricorn together are a powerhouse and can be trusted to get shit done. Amen to that, says the Scorpio rising with a Capricorn moon. It's right. You gotta just get in there and do it. That's another thing I like about Venus in Scorpio too. Just Scorpio energy, there's power here. Capricorn, there's power too, but there's different dynamics of power. There's different levels to which that pops off with the power energy. One comes from like a soulful, like emotional, like, just that deep well of power. Another one's with the power of like the manipulator of the material world. So actually, you know what? I'm going to pull a card for this since we are in the zone for the beginning of this week and we got that last quarter. Maybe I'll just pull cards for the quarters and see what comes up. So all right, so last quarter in Virgo, Venus trining Saturn, that Mercury now in Capricorn, getting ready to go retrograde. What do we got here this time? Oh, I like this. We got the Ace of Swords, the card of invoked force. And so talk about like stepping up to the plate and like accepting a challenge or having to get things done and just having like the motivation and the clarity. So that's an interesting part, right? Because this is the last quarter in Virgo. So Mercury is a big component of this, right? And so Mercury in Capricorn, having come off a sextile with Saturn, is a very different Mercury than Mercury having squared Neptune on the full moon in Gemini, another Mercury ruled lunar phase. So The clarity is coming back. We know what we're doing. We're ready to tackle the business. I like this. I like this a lot. All right. Oh, but you know what's also happening? Because the universe never stops. The universe never stops. This, and maybe this is actually where the clarity is also coming in too. December 6th, Wednesday, Neptune is stationing direct. And so, I mean, Neptune, I love to associate Neptune with the fantasy, with the dream, with the vision, with the soul. Obviously, it has a whole other thing going on. It's a very complicated planet. Like if someone was like, Mel, what is the most varied and complex planet that's out there? I would say it's Neptune, because it just has so many variations to it. Because it does bring up things like grief and loss and erosion. And I talked about all this before with Neptune. But Neptune is stationing direct. And so I feel like this is a prime time to really get into the ideals once again, and the vision and the dream. And how do we start to make that a reality? What has to be let go and released and sacrificed for that? You know, that's the thing with Neptune too, is it's like, okay, you can have that beautiful vision that you're looking at, but you can't have it all, right? You got to let go of this. You got to let go of that person. You got to let go of that job. You got to, sometimes we lose things that seem absolutely horrible. Like, just to use an example, and I don't even know if Neptune was involved in this, but it's just coming to mind. Like a good friend of mine who had a dog that she just loved. I mean, she loved this dog, 16 years old. It was her heart, her soul. But it required a lot of care. It required a lot of sacrifice. It required a lot of just a lot of her not being able to do kind of maybe the more spontaneous things she wanted to do, and to go journey and go on vacations, just simple things like that. And when that dog passed, it was obviously incredible grief for her. And it will probably still be for her entire life, right? There's certain griefs that don't ever go away. We can accept them and make peace with them, and even find that happy place of them and what was lost. But it's just there, right? But dog passes. Now her and her partner are constantly going on vacations and outings, and just life is different. Life gets back to the ideal, but you have to make the trade. So there's something to be said about, I guess we could say, kind of making the trade with Neptune going direct. And Neptune's role isn't over here. So put Neptune on ice for now, but just know there's going to be that kind of sea, Big Steph says, sea of delusion. Yeah, Steph, Neptune on a collective level, that is. It's true. Well, and that's something to think about here too, with Neptune being, a lot of times you find Neptune in war, because Neptune has to do with, subversive tactics. Like, you don't want to see your enemy coming. Like, you're planning behind the scenes. So there can be things that could come out around this early part of December 6th, where, especially since Mars actions are all obscured with it being combust the sun, that can have that sort of subversive tactic, or where there's, sneak attacks that happen too. I mean, you think about just back to the Ace of Swords. I mean, that's a very, actually, if you think about raising your sword, that's kind of a volatile vibe on another level. There's many ways you can read a card, but so we're going to put Neptune on ice a little bit there, but just know that is turning direct then. And so what else is going on that week? Well, we have the sun. The sun is getting to mid-Sagittarius, right? We're almost to the middle of the transit, and it's going to be in a trine with Chiron, which I always find is beneficial for, kind of working through our triggers, working through those wounded parts of ourselves, working through, especially with Chiron in Aries, what it is that we are being asked to step up into and assert ourselves in some way. in order to move forward and to experience this next level of the quest or the journey that we're going through. And so it can be a little like, a little irritating or a little irksome or a little just something can be difficult where you got to work through your own BS, right? But the sun's like, no, you got this. You're aware that there's much more. You're aware of what's on the horizon, how your life is expanding, and you can do this. And why I think that is double down the case is that Mercury at the same time is also trining Jupiter. So we're in this expansive mode, and an expansive mode that is very practical, right? This is not like sugar plum fairies dancing through our head. It's like, oh no, I have to move this money around to do this, and I have to sell this, get rid of this property in order to bring this in, or I want to save for this so that I can then manifest this. It's like these real world tactical strategies that our heads are in, but we need the inspiration and we need to work through like the motivating factors that allow us to make those, real world moves. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of water and we're going to move on here. Now, what to keep in mind, Mercury trining Jupiter, is this is the first pass. So there's going to be another, with the Mercury retrograde, there's going to be 3 passes of a trine to Jupiter. Mercury is going to do 3 passes with the sextile to Saturn. And then Mercury, I should have said this back in the full moon in Gemini, that Mercury square to Neptune was the first of 3. So there's a lot of foreshadowing around the Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter sort of energy. The dream to the reality to the actual like expansion and the moves that will be made. So, all right. Well, this is leading us to actually Venus. Venus is going to have her own opposition energy with Jupiter too. So we're kind of getting a little double down with Jupiter action at this time during the week of the 4th, December 4th. So Venus is going to oppose Jupiter on December 9th, and then she's going to sextile Mercury around that same time. Which I think is a very, who's this going to be? I feel like this is very Vibe Cat. I forgot about my little cutesy animals. This is very Vibe Cat to me because we got the 2 benefics coming together in opposition where there is that tension. But there's also that bird's eye view. How do we relationally meet in order to move forward and manifest what we want to make in this world? What's the quality of embodiment? It feels like a very sexual transit to me too. If we need to come together bodily with other people, it has that vibe, because Venus, she's a little steamy in Scorpio. She's a little schemy. She's a little schemy too. Pun intended. So there is this chance for relationships to come together on a practical level, and also to be on par with values and be motivated by what actually you value and you want to move towards, and to discard the things maybe from a belief standpoint, right? We got to bring in Jupiter with the idea of beliefs, and Sagittarius is the zone of belief, one of the zones of belief at least. And so how do we reconcile more stagnant or stuck beliefs to be able to move forward in relationships, to be able to move forward towards what it is we desire or that we're attracted to, and then being able to communicate it, right? I love when Mercury and Venus come together, especially if Mercury is about to station retrograde, right? There is this, Mercury might have a message for Venus here, And it's a great time to be able to talk through things in partnerships or just in social settings or friends, or talk through things with yourself, right? Because there is that rapport and that ability to intellectually work together in a way that supports union and supports coming together, even when there might be elements that are independent driven because of Venus being in Mars's sign. So it's not all like, oh yeah, we're together with this. It's like, no, I feel this way and you feel this way, but let's talk this out and come to a practical solution, because we want to move forward, and that is what matters most. All right. So how's everyone doing out there? You feeling sad? Are you feeling Sag season so far? You feeling that Sag energy? Because we're gonna get that new moon hit. That's what's coming next. New moon, December 12th, Tuesday. 3:32 p.m. So we got that new moon at 20 degrees and 40 minutes of Sagittarius. And we have, and so what is that in a square to? Oh, it's our good old friend Neptune again. Neptune is back in the fray. And so we have a whole lunar cycle that is, so we're going from the Scorpio energy of the opposition to Uranus, and this time period that is kind of awakening us and waking our motivational energy and our mission energy, and things are turning over, and we're at a point of change. And so now we're like, okay, well, we're in this transition zone. We're in this idealistic, this visionary phase, but also, once again, what gets left behind. And getting things left behind don't actually always have to be a very physical thing. They can be a very emotional thing, in that whole Piscean word of transcendence. How do we transcend something so that we can move forward with a new quest or onto the vision? So I'm doubling down on this transcending energy, which can feel a little blinky dog. Can feel a little blinky dog, I think. Because it could be some difficult awareness to work through, that we don't always have like a total grip on, of like why that's difficult or why we feel the way we do. Because that's the thing that could be about Neptune, is it's very, very subversive in the sense where I don't know why I'm feeling this way, or I just feel off, or some, like, what's wrong? And you're like, I don't know, but you know that something is, but what is it? So there can be some of that that's coming up during this time. But there's also, what else do we got here? We got Mercury still, because Mercury is slowing down. So Mercury is stationing retrograde on this very day. So let me just put that up. Just kind of think about it here. Mercury. So a handful of hours later, Mercury stations retrograde. And it does so in that trine to Jupiter. So once again, I feel like there's just this intellectual space where we are tapped in. We're just tapped into the next thing. We are ready for the next thing, but there's so much preparation. I got to hone that home, is that there's a lot of preparation that needs to be done with these retrogrades. And it's on a very practical level. Like, we're not going to get to April next year unless in all the, the fireworks and the switches and that true new beginning that we keep talking about. We've been talking about it since like the pandemic. And then we kind of brought it in 2021, and then we teased about it in 2022 and in 2023, and especially now with the eclipses in Aries. But 2024 and that April, I feel like that is that is the thing that we've been waiting for or looking for. But we're still in reorientation mode. So let's get a card for this new moon action on December 12th. See what comes up. Oh, I like this. The Four of Wands. The Four of Wands, I always think about this card as being, it is an Aries card, being the card of the milestone. This is, the mile marker that we want in life. Well, what it is that we're working for. I mean, sometimes that is to get to the point of a relationship where we get married, right? Sometimes marriage and a celebration will be in this card. Sometimes it's actually like building the foundation of like of a home or a business and getting it to that foundation, or just a goal in general, an aspiration, getting it to that place where we can stand upon it. And so there's something about this new moon cycle that is about us getting to the next milestone and what it takes to get there, and also having the inspiration and the hope and the vision to move in that direction. So it seems very fortuitous, actually, even if there are these Neptunian elements that can be confusing and involved, and Mercury's mucking it up over there. Mercury retrograde in a Earth sign is always, we've been experiencing them, right? We had Mercury in Virgo retrograde last time around. We had the Taurus one before that, and it can be really disorienting because it affects us on the physical world, right? That's like when things break down, like literal mechanics and stuff that's just been old and just worn out and not working. It's gonna break down. There's parts of the society that are going to break down here, right? Having Mercury move back and forth from Capricorn to Sagittarius. We're coming from this place of the cardinal earth and what's being started and initiated into the material realm, but how do we still reconcile with the transition of the spirit and the passion and the just the more not ethereal, maybe the ethereal sides of ourselves, but we are going to have Mercury squaring Neptune pretty much as it stations direct. But there are all these real world implications that Mercury needs to work out, whether it's like old paperwork or fixing an appliance or, doing a renovation that you've been sitting on forever. This stuff is going to come up. So if something's a little rickety, not working, and that could be a literal thing, or that can be like a work dynamic or a habit or, some type of producing element, it's going to break down. It's going to show you. And it's like, okay, well, how do we stay aligned with Jupiter to rework all that and then move it forward? So we have an interesting start to that week of the December 11th, because we have that new moon and then Mercury stationing. So set your calendars for that. And then what's going to happen is basically that the sun, because it's in orb with Neptune, is going to move on to square this Neptune energy on the 15th and the 16th. So later that week. So this is going to be what a way to start off a lunar cycle, right? We're just sort of in our dream zone. We're in this ethereal place. Things might feel a little confusing or off, or just trying to figure it out. And there's that uncertainty, right? But we still have the vision. We have something to attach to, and there could just be diffused energies, right? So I would just be very cautious during that time, just because Neptune's involved, Mercury retrograde's involved. I don't really have a emoji for that one. I think maybe confused dog just keeps coming up here. I'm just going to go with that. Confused dog. So know that it's just going to be a very Neptunian week, and there's just going to be miscommunication, things not going as planned, and sit back into it, right? Just sit back into it. Because Mars is also in a trine, making the trine to Chiron now too. So once again, we're kind of getting this place where how can we be effective and assertive, and we might be a little restless, especially when they're, Mars in Sagittarius is restless by nature. It's quick to move. It doesn't want to stay in places too long, or it can get irritated sort of easily if it's hemmed in any way. So having things not go according as planned, sometimes that can bring up these triggers of maybe some aggression, or maybe just that hot-headedness or irritation. But how do we work with that? How do we cool it down? I think it helps that Mars has Jupiter in Taurus behind it, so it doesn't make it as hot-headed, or even it is, it's very stubborn about it. But I think that definitely helps. And keep in mind too the quality of Sagittarius season last year, right? In 2022, that's when we had Jupiter moving at the end of Pisces, and then right before Sagittarius season ended, it moved into Aries, and it was a totally different quality of like, all right, we're moving forward. This big burst is going to happen. I'm feeling all these things, and there's actual movement. This one is, once again, I wanted to state how internalized I think it is. And that is such a huge component to us moving forward, is more of this embodiment that has to happen in an integration level to really be effective, especially once Jupiter goes direct at the end of this year. So speaking of Jupiter, we got Mercury's second pass with Jupiter on the 18th. On that following Monday, we are going to have a second trine to Jupiter. And so basically, this is going to be happening the whole entire time. Like, this is the second one, but since the first one happened in December 7th, it's like we have a good solid 2 weeks of just Mercury trining Jupiter. So we are just in that headspace of being able to see the practicalities and the details of things, but also being able to see the forest through the trees, you know. So that is such a valuable transit, even if we are, you know, in this Mercury retrograde space. And we got to keep that in mind with Mercury retrograde, is that this is the end. When it stations retrograde, this is the end of its cycle. So it's taking all that it's gathered since really since it's Cazimi with the sun when it was retrograde back in Virgo. I can't remember quite when that was, but I believe it was in I know exactly when that was. That was September, around like September 5th or 6th, maybe 7th, somewhere around then. So we're still integrating all this information, right? And that's the beauty of it, is we collect and we process and we synthesize and we get the most out of what it is we know and work with that. So it's not until actually around the solstice when the sun and Mercury are actually going to meet. I'm just going to jump ahead here to show this because it's an important transit. The sun and Mercury are going to meet on the solstice at 0 degrees Capricorn. So this is a powerful fusion of real world initiation in the beginning, the starting point, which is fascinating to think about because this was the area that was triggered last year by the square to Jupiter from when it was in Aries. And so here, once again, we sort of have Jupiter transferring its message through Mercury, and then having this moment, this pivotal moment on the solstice. So I know that's like getting ahead of things, but there's such power, I think, that is going to come out of this this mental power and this decisiveness that is going to come out of this Mercury retrograde. And so we're just collecting it, right, while it's trining Jupiter there. So all right, let's see there's just a couple more things to talk about before we wrap up here. And that's the first quarter in Pisces. Actually, I think I have it right on the day. Yes. So Neptune is back, and we have a push off of this lunar cycle with the first quarter moon in Pisces on December 19th. And actually, it makes me think of, just to pull back real quick with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, buy your presents early. I think it's really funny that everybody, I don't know if everybody else has seen this, but how Black Friday has now become how many Fridays before Black Friday? Like, everybody is like, how soon can we get you this sale? How it's so funny to me. Just jumping the gun. But I think it's good to jump the gun this year because we're going to have a Mercury retrograde throughout the whole, buying season and getting your presents, getting things on time. It's going to be trying Jupiter, but that doesn't mean, these are both retrograde planets. So it doesn't mean it's going to get there on time. And especially if you're a last minute shopper like this, and we got this first quarter in Pisces on Neptune, there's just going to be a lot of jumbling going on. So take care of your business early, I guess is what I'm saying, so that you can avoid the retrograde antics. But once again, I feel like this first quarter is getting us back to that dreamlike energy. But it could also, it's a double-edged sword, but that's what mutable energy is, right? It's like a double-bodied. It's on one side is this thing and on one side is that thing. So on one side, we're like wading through pea soup and fog and like, what is going on here? Or there's some difficulties and challenges to get through based on either diffused energy or miscommunication or something falling apart, literally or figuratively. But then there's this other part of us that is in this dream-like space where we're pushing off of the daydream and the fantasy, and we've got our rose-colored glasses on. And those two can combine together, or there can be two separate different worlds, and we're just feeling them simultaneously. But let's get a card for first quarter in Pisces, because if you look at Venus in Scorpio over here. What's she doing? Well, she's getting awful close to this opposition with Uranus. And essentially this is leading us to the end of Sagittarius season here. So let's think about this time. First quarter in Pisces. The card no one likes to see. Well, there's a few of those, but Nine of Swords. This is the recipe for anxiety. And when we have anxiety in life, when we have worst case scenarios run through our head, sometimes we do have a worst case scenario. Maybe something like you're like, oh, this, and there was an idealism around it. And you're like, oh no, this will probably pan out and it'll work on its own. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. And you're like, oh, well, I guess hope and faith doesn't work everything out. But if you just feel this general sense, especially with Venus getting up close to opposing Uranus, and it just has that just anxiety vibe, or is bringing up some, Neptune, we talk about grief and loss and how it can bring up certain traumas that have to be worked with through too. Just keep that in mind. So it's an interesting period of time, December 19th, give or take, with that Pisces energy. Because Mercury's going to be Mercury's getting ready to sextile Saturn for the second time, which can definitely put us in a sobering headspace. And then pairing that with Venus and Uranus. And I mean, it's interesting because Uranus is in Taurus. So obviously Venus is behind the Uranian energy, but she is in that, that detriment place. And so she's not necessarily playing nice as she normally would. And Mars is still, it's out of the beams, or it's out of combustion. So that's good. But I'm going to give this zone here, one of our thunder. So right before the solstice, there can be some thunder zone, the thunder zone going on. Just FYI. Just because things are just shaking up, interpersonal dynamics are difficult. Think about like the difficult relative that's throwing some stick in the spoke, or like changing everything up, and now they're not going to show up, and are they going to show up, and it's just this back and forth, and you're trying to find compassion, but it's driving you nuts, like it's just this tension that is taking place, where you still have to come out with that Mercury Saturn energy to be as level-headed, I guess. and kind of chill about it but inside you're like feeling the Venus Uranus, and it's a little bit rough, especially once we get to that Aries moon too. That's going to spike everything up. So basically Venus is going to oppose Uranus on December 20th during this Aries moon. So just that can just be a little crunchy, just FYI. It'll be a little crunchy right there in the interpersonal dynamic zone. But if you keep your head cool and you keep that Saturn realism, and take it one step at a time, you're going to be just fine. So that really brings us to the end of this Sagittarius season. I hope you've stayed with me for this first time of doing it like this. We always say one word for Sag season. And so if you're still with me on the chat, if you have one word, I'd love to hear it. What's your one word? What's my one word? My one word is, what is my one word? Let's close my eyes. Antsy. I don't know why that came up. Antsy. Maybe because we're just eager, Sometimes we just want to move on. We want to get to the next thing. But when there's all these different stuff coming up, that is part of it. We start to feel antsy inside. And so I guess that's why it's an interesting word to come up, but I'm going with it. Planet Queen says adventure. Yes, that's Sagittarius. That is Sagittarius, true and true. LaRonda says create. I like that, especially with all that Neptune energy. That's very potent to think about. We are in co-creation mode because we don't create alone. We create with other people. We create with the universe. Kiki says reset. Oh, I like that. We might need to reset in the flame. I think about the phoenix, we think about, this is a very graphic way of looking at it, but I was thinking about, Buddhists, like the monks that would self-immolate and set themselves on fire, which I don't recommend. Do not do that. But if we're just thinking about, and that's usually in terms of protest, but sometimes I guess what I'm just seeing is this like resetting zone that comes through the flames, that sort of the flames of purification, I guess is what I'm trying to communicate here. Lisa says buyers beware. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that something can look very good this season and then it shows up and you're like, what is this? It's like much crappier, like falling apart, missing a piece. I can feel like things are going to be missing a piece. Oh, Lottie says recuperate. Now let's get into the reset theme. I like that. I think I know a lot of you're Scorpio rising like me, where we do need to recuperate. Can we just get a second, please? Oh, F says evolution. Ain't that the truth? That is what Jupiter brings. That is what Jupiter season brings, is evolution. And that looks different on many different levels, but I'm 100% with that word. Those are all great words. I love this. All right, so we have come to an end here. Oh, I'm so glad everyone who stayed with me during this broadcast, and hopefully you had a good time. Hope you listeners out there who are listening to the podcast version of this enjoyed this or got something out of this broadcast. And if you're watching this or listening after the fact and you want to find me, you can go to energeticprinciples.com, where you can, if you go to the bottom of my page there, you can sign up for the monthly newsletter, The Heavenly Wind, which you don't want to miss out on. There's lots chocked full of all types of good stuff. there. You sign up for that for free. And of course, I have my services page if you would like to book an astrological consultation. And I'm also going to be adding tarot services too, because I do a lot of tarot and it's not on there, But we're getting to the end of the year, and this is a great time to do like a year ahead consult, or if you just want to look at things in the next 3 months, there's consults for that too. But feel free to book something or reach out if you have any questions about that. I would love to connect with you. And so if you are watching this on YouTube and you had a good time and you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Comment down below, share what your one word is, share what you think is going to happen during Sagittarius season. We'd love to have you in the chat. What else? If you're listening to this on podcast form, especially on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Let people know what you think. Hopefully it's good what you think, but it helps myself and the guests that come on be seen. And speaking of guests, I'll be back again with a Shu Yap is going to join me for the Capricorn season forecast. And then of course I've got Gray Crawford coming back for the year ahead, for the 2024 yearly forecast, which is always exciting. So I think I am going to I'd love to do some more of these broadcasts, but I think I'm going to do them in a different form, like a shorter form, where maybe we can talk about just the week or talk about specialized transits, because I think that would be fun and a good way to connect and just pop on. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the chat or in the feed or in the comments, and I will consider doing more of those, because this definitely was fun. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and staying with me. I wish you the best during Sagittarius season. Get your adventure on, get your recuperation on, your reset on. And if you feel antsy, just take a deep breath and bring it back to center. All right, everyone, we'll have a fabulous Sag season. And as always, may the stars be with you.